We're going to follow with the fourth presentation by Dr. Jack Damico. His presentation is called The Role of Compensation in Aphasia Communication. Dr. Jack Damico headed these Ignite talks and is going to be the driving force behind them along with the Vice President's office.
Thank you. As a social scientist, a speech pathologist, and I'm trained as a linguist, I'm very interested in this role of compensation in aphasia. Aphasia is a neurological impairment that's usually due to a stroke, and what it does is it creates a processing deficit in an individual, and that processing deficit allows you or prevents you from having access to your language ability, all symbolic systems, but language particularly. Stroke and aphasia is a very big problem here in the United States. About 500,000 people a year, maybe 600,000 in the United States have stroke. It's the third leading cause of death in the United States, and many of those people end up having an aphasia as a result. Now, despite the fact that the aphasia due to stroke causes language deficits due to the processing problems, your inaccessibility to language ability itself, these people still strive to communicate because they're social actors and they want to communicate even though they don't have the language ability. How do they do that? One of the ways is through the use of compensatory strategies. Compensatory strategies are new or expanded communicative behaviors that they systematically employ to overcome the communicative barriers or the deficits that they have when they're trying to communicate due to the stroke itself. And so we're interested in looking at these kinds of things in our lab. We use discovery procedures from qualitative research and from sociolinguistics and linguistics proper to study these kinds of things, looking at the discovery procedures like conversation analysis, grounded theory, phenomenology, systematic functional analysis, and allows us to look at individuals who have aphasia and the kind of individual compensations they use, the kinds of compensations they use when they're working with other people, and how we can take those compensations and apply them in some rehabilitation study. Now, why is this important, this idea of compensatory strategy? Well, number one, it's important to understand the impact of aphasia on an individual, and compensations or compensatory strategies allow us to do those kinds of things. It's also important because it allows us to recognize the residual deficits that people have and the fact that they can overcome those. Now, we have done work with approximately 30 publications dealing with this particular area. And here are some of the things that we found. Number one, that we've reformulated the definition of compensatory strategies in the field. We've described various verbal, linguistic, and non-linguistic compensations that people use to overcome their linguistic deficits. We found that some of these variables can be influenced in the development of compensations themselves. Within the individual with aphasia, just that individual, we find that they can create compensations to overcome, for instance, agrammatism, that is a lack of grammatical effectiveness in their speech, and there are different ways that they can do that you see on the board. We've looked at the ways that they use compensations to overcome their unintelligibility when they have motor speech problems in addition to the aphasia. We've looked at things like laughter as an interactive device and a communicative or compensation strategy, and we've tried to place the kinds of things done in compensations in a clinical format so that we can help people. Those are some of the things we found with an individual with aphasia, just him. But we can also look at how that individual and their social dyad, or the people they communicate with, also create compensations. Because some compensations aren't created by the individual with aphasia, but rather by the other people. You have to think about aphasia not as a problem with a person's brain, but a problem in the social dyad, the social interaction they have with others. And so that's one of the other areas that we're looking for. We found a number of interactional themes dealing with it. The board, you see some of those. Acceptance of responsibility, recognition of underlying ability is important, understanding how over time they can develop compensatory strategies through the actual use of compensations to overcome communication deficits themselves. Applications based on the research that we've done is we've created and established ways of doing therapy, ways of describing and assessing people, looking at both their strengths and weaknesses because of the kinds of compensations they make. Individuals who are impaired are social creatures. And even though they've lost linguistic ability, they're very interested in reestablishing and being a social creature itself. My colleagues, Karen Lynch and Jennifer Tetnowski, and I have worked on this a lot. We've got a lot of other things that can be done. There's plenty of room to work on these kinds of things. And so if anyone's interested in working with individuals with stroke and compensation, contact us. We're happy to work with you. Thank you.